Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Tom, this may be the last throwback we get to do this year. There's already new music coming out in 2014.
Yep.
Our lapse of new releases is ending, and that means that we at some point have to stop reviewing old albums. But we get this one last album, and we're big Coheed and Cambria fans. We thought we'd go back and review the first Coheed and Cambria album, the Second Stage Turbine Blade, which actually, if you're into Coheed and Cambria, you know that these guys are concept-minded. Every single one of their albums participates in this huge story arc. And the Second Stage Turbine Blade introduces the characters Coheed and Cambria in this vast story that's really a modern-day tragedy, if you're into the graphic novel or any of the story that backs it. I've actually never read the graphic novel. It's on my to-do list, but I have done a lot of research about what the story entails, like reading summaries and stuff like that.
It's very dark.
It's dark, it's quite moving, and it really powers a lot of just the mood and intensity that you hear throughout Coheed and Cambria's body of work. Coheed and Cambria, the band, not the characters. The Second Stage Turbine Blade is actually the second album in that series.
Makes sense.
And it's their debut. Yeah, this came out in 2002. Tom, what was going on in 2002? What style did Coheed and Cambria fit in, and how did it fit into the genre?
Well, they were at an interesting point in time, because coming out of the 90s, obviously, is when some of the kind of post-hardcore genre started. And I think that this is right at the cusp of where that genre started to bleed into kind of the emo rock genre, where you were getting bands like Taking Back Sunday and Hawthorne Heights even hitting the mainstream.
Fall Out Boy.
Exactly. And Coheed and Cambria is kind of an odd hybrid of sounds, because you can draw comparisons to some of those bands I just mentioned, but I think that they are a significant step above some of those acts that were really hitting that teen demographic on the radio mainstream. And the reason for that is just their amazing instrumentation, particularly with guitar, I'll say, but it's not like the drums and bass don't do a lot of work on this album too, but particularly song structures. They do a lot with just huge, sprawling song structures that are very hard to predict. And it really harkens back to more of like the Sunny Day Real Estate kind of rock that was going on.
We don't like that band, do we, Tom?
Were there any other bands that sound like them? I don't know.
Man.
So I can't help but make that comparison, especially on tracks like Delirium Trigger, where you just have those kind of hypnotic lead guitar lines that bust into this burgeoning kind of punk energy, but it's got the nice vocals with some random shouts behind them, kind of beefing it up. And I think that on first listen, when you get this, if you're not used to the genre, it comes off as sounding a little bit immature and a little bit raw. But then, man, once you wrap your head around the songwriting and the way that these guys are constructing these songs and the way that they flow, it is mind-blowing, particularly, I will say, not counting the first track, the kind of intro, self-titled, or, title track of the album. Tracks 2 through 5, Time Consumer, Devil in Jersey City, Everything Evil, and Delirium Trigger, are powerhouses. Every single one of them. And I always thought, before we reviewed this, now this has always actually been my favorite Coheed album, but I've always kind of thought that the back half was a little weaker. The songs just didn't jump out at me as much, and I still think they're a little bit weaker than the front half, just because nothing can live up to those first 4 tracks to me. But man, I ended up loving those as well. Every song to me has a very unique identity, but they make for a fluid listen. 33, track 7, for example, it's probably about as poppy as it gets on this album, but it's just infectious. It's fun. This album came out in the same year as Glassjaw's Worship and Tribute. I would kind of liken 33 to the song Radio Cambodia from Worship and Tribute, where it gets a little poppier, but since it's just that one song, it works.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's definitely the poppiest track on this album. The rest of these songs are sprawling all over the place. And I agree with you. I mean, the primary instrument that you really notice on this album is guitar. The guitars on this album are working their ass off throughout the entire album, whether it's providing like crunchy rhythms or providing a really nice lead sound. There's nothing but lots of melodies here that they're layering and mixing together. Now, the first time you put this album on, it does have that raw effect. This sounds like a first album by a rock band. It sounds like something they made in their bedroom using
it's fairly underproduced.
Yeah, it is. It sounds raw, and it gives it just this glimmering personality that you know, from the rest of Coheed's discography, you know, I think each additional album that they've come out with has sounded more and more polished. There's good things and bad things to that. You know, you hear a lot more of the other instruments, but at the same time, you don't have that, you know, that naivety. Almost. So you don't have that almost just perfect sense of just, I don't know, just like pure dumb luck,
genuine energy.
Yeah. And this album just has all those like really charming qualities to it that you don't get on some of the later albums. What you do get though is a lot of really damn good prog rock songs that are willing to go out of the norm of what was going on at the time for this genre, what had been done in the past, just all over the place. These guys are setting new ground, and I think that's why, you know, this album got more. You know, this wasn't the album that really got them big. I mean, it was pretty a small cult following, and then their second album, Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3, that album really, I think, got a little bit more, but it wasn't until 2005 when, you know, that album came out, when 4 came out.
You're totally right, and I think that gives this a little bit of an authentic quality. Now, these guys have still stayed, I would say, pretty unique, pretty original throughout their discography, but, you know, being that this was their first, you know, their first album.
Right.
It was really the start of all that. And at first, Coheed was a band that I had a lot of problems getting into because it just didn't really click with me. But the more I listened to it, the more I realized, man, these guys, they're really everything that I look for in a rock band. They play with song structures. They have great instrumentation. They have great hooks. I mean, these songs just get stuck in my head.
Yeah.
There is an energy and just a mood to them that stays with me. And I just love it. The more I listen to this album, really, the more I love it, and I just want to keep going.
Claudio Sanchez has a very unique voice, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, he does.
Not only is he just a great guitarist and a crazy mastermind when it comes to designing, you know, lyrics and album concepts and things like that, and you know, he's helping make the graphic novel that they're doing right now. But I mean, on top of it, he has a really interesting voice, and I like it. I like it a lot. I actually think it's a very good voice. It's kind of similar. It's a very high falsetto voice, much like, you know, that of the Mars Volta. But I think that, you know, it fits the music because you can hear it. It never gets really drowned out by the guitars, and it adds another layer of melody to it. And do I think his melodies are always top notch? Or it's not the best that I've ever heard, but it does good enough that it sells the song to me. It makes me want to come back and listen to this song because the true beauty of Coheed is really getting into the structure of how they're writing the songs. And I think that once you do that, you know, it just starts to stick with you. I agree with you though, Tom. The back half of this album, particularly track 6, Heartshot Kid Disaster, and track 8, June Song Provision, a little bit too scatterbrained. I feel like,
I understand.
I feel like it wasn't until their second album that they really, I think, perfected some of their songwriting. But obviously they showed a lot of talent here. But I'm a little bit lower than you just because of those 2 tracks.
I understand that.
I'm going to go 88 on
I'm
this
going
one.
94.
Okay, we love Coheed, if you can't tell. If you out there love Coheed, then tell us what was your favorite Coheed and Cambria album. This is a band that we've reviewed several of their albums now.
Yeah, their last 3.
And I would really like to just get the whole discography at some point.
Yeah, right.
It's not like, you know, last February we spent a month and we pretty much, when we weren't reviewing music, we're listening to Coheed
constantly. And you know, huge kick.
You know, so someday we're going to have to review the rest. We'd really like to know what your favorite was, so please let us know at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. Hey, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, let us know what you'd like to see us review on this channel, 2014 or in the past. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIM TV, moving music critique forward.